I'm here at the bottom of Apparition Hill in Medjugorje, and I'm with, what's your name?
Sandy Tobin.
Where are you from, Sandy?
I'm from Crystal River, Florida.
And you told me your story. It starts, you said, with an aunt.
My grandmother. My grandmother told me about Lourdes when I was very small.
Yeah.
And she was French, and she told me the story many times about Our Lady appearing to Saint Bernadette. And she told it as though she had seen the whole thing with her own eyes. And I loved the story, so much so that I used to, as a small child, pretend that I was Saint Bernadette and kneel in front of the statue of Our Lady. And I told my grandmother that if Our Lady ever appears anywhere in the world in my lifetime, I would be there. So when I first heard about Medjugorje, I knew that I had to come. And it took a long time. Took 3 years of praying and saving up the money to be able to come. And then finally this friend gave us a gift of our first trip to Medjugorje. So my husband and I came in 1987, and it was a life-changing experience for me.
What happened?
Well, a lot of things happen.
First of all, you said like when you saw a picture of the appearance here?
Yes, I had this lady that gave us the gift,
Yeah.
had been here before, and she was in the apparition room with the visionaries, and she took pictures during the apparition time. And when she came back and showed me those pictures, and I saw their faces, I knew instantly that it was real. I had no doubt whatsoever. And then I really, really wanted to come.
And you said you got the gift to come. You
Yes.
didn't have enough money, and this lady gave you
Exactly. Wow. So she gave us the gift, and it was just more than I could have anticipated.
What happened?
Well, a number of things happened. For one thing, I was really struggling with forgiveness, because my father had been very abusive, and I kept hearing Father Yozo said something about forgiveness, and Vitska said something about forgiveness. And when Vitska spoke about it, she said, we must pray for peace in our hearts. And once we have that peace in our hearts, then we can pray for peace in our families, our communities, our nation, and in the world. But if we have a lack of forgiveness, we won't have that peace in our hearts. So first we need to forgive, and then we can have that peace. So that really hit me hard. And when we were up on Apparition Hill, I thought about it a lot. And I thought, how am I going to forgive my father? He was not a nice man, and he had died. And I thought, well, he's already dead. How can I forgive him? So when I got home from that trip, that just stayed with me, that need. And so finally I said, I have to go to his grave, which was in Illinois, and I live in Florida. So I flew up to Illinois, and I went to my father's grave, and I had taken some flowers, and the first thing I noticed when I got to his grave is that his grave was all overgrown and messy, where other graves were all neatly trimmed. And I knew that it was because I was his only child, and there was no one else to take care of his grave. And then I realized I had never prayed for him, for his soul, because I just didn't. And so my aunt had come along with me, and when we finally found his grave, I started cleaning it up and fixing it up, and I put the flowers down, and I started talking to him, and I forgave him, and I asked him to forgive me for never having prayed for him, and I promised him that I would pray for him for the rest of my life. And as I was saying these prayers, it started to rain. And it rained so hard, it was just pouring. And my aunt ran and got in the car to get out of the rain, and I didn't care. I wasn't finished with my prayer. So as I finished, finally, I walked to the car, and when I got to the car, my aunt was sitting there with a very shocked look on her face, and I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "Look around here." And I looked around, and the only place it was raining was right over my father's grave. Everything else was bone dry. There was just like a shower of rain over my father's grave. And from that moment, it was like this huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders, and I knew then that was a gift from Our Lady. And that was why I heard that so distinctly in Medjugorje. So I knew then that I wanted to come back. And I felt really guilty almost for wanting to come again because we'd gotten this gift. So I contacted this travel company that we had booked the trip through, and I said, "Is there any way I could earn a trip?" And they said, "Well, if you get 40 people, we'll give you a free trip." So I got 44 people to come, including my pastor. And they didn't just give me a free trip, they sent me as the tour guide. I knew nothing about being a tour guide. So I guess they went
from your actual tour, right? Yeah.
My grandchildren. Our guide and my grandchildren.
How beautiful.
And
okay.
So we came, and as I said, I knew nothing about being a tour guide. And the lady who had given us the trip the first time had said to me, "When you are up on Apparition Hill, please bring me back 10 stones from the Hill of Apparitions." I said, "Sure." So we get up there. Up here, right?
There we go. Yeah.
And in those days, they didn't have the restrictions about being quiet up there. So we formed a circle and we prayed the rosary together. And while we were praying the rosary, I remembered about the 10 stones, and I looked down at the ground. There weren't any stones. I mean, there were big rocks, but where the apparition site is, that had been picked clean by all the other people that had been there. Right. So I thought, well, I'll have to get them a little bit further away from the actual spot. Mm-hmm. So we finished our rosary, and we decided to just stay there for a while and have some quiet time. So we were sitting, and I had my back to the cross, or where the statue is now, and I heard this noise, and I turned around and I saw this little lady with a babushka, mm-hmm. and she had picked up a rather large rock, and she was slamming it against another rock, just making this really loud noise. And I remember feeling a little bit annoyed because it was so peaceful until she started doing that. So I turned back around and tried to ignore it, and a few minutes later, there was a tap on my shoulder, and I turned and looked, and it was the same lady, only now she was young. When I had looked at her before, she looked like an elderly lady, but she had a very young face, same clothing, same scarf on her head, babushka, they said, but a very young, beautiful face. And she looked at me, and she motioned for me to follow her. And I said, "Me," and she shook her head, yes. So I got up and I followed her, and she went back over where she had been banging that rock, and there were 10 stones that she had made by breaking the rock. And she pointed to those stones, and that they were for me. And I bent down to pick them up, and I had a plastic bag with me, and I was counting them as I was picking them up, and there were exactly 10 stones. And I looked up to say thank you, and she had vanished. She just was not there. And so that was really amazing. Really, really amazing. So
That's the second trip, right?
that was the second trip, but there was more.
Yeah, you told me. Tell me, how often have you been here?
This is my 171st trip.
It's unbelievable to listen.
It is to me too, because I was coming every month during the war,
Uh-huh.
and in fact, my body didn't know what time zone I was in.
I can imagine.
I would
And
be.
how did you get here at the time? Was there the same infrastructures to fly into Split or to Dubrovnik? Or
All different ways, because I was bringing humanitarian aid, and so it just depended on what the situation was at the time. Like there was one time when I had 350 boxes of humanitarian aid that I'd brought from the States, and we could only fly as far as Vienna. We couldn't get any closer than Vienna, so we had to have a truck come and meet us
in the
there in Vienna to transport everything here. And I was going to the front lines taking, and I'm not a brave person, believe me.
Through Christ, you can do a lot.
I
Through
was
Christ,
just
eh?
going to say that if it had been my own will, it never would have happened. But
God filled
just-
you with that
yes.
zeal, no? It's zeal you call it, or this passion to do it.
Oh yeah, and I never felt afraid, and I get nervous when there's turbulence in the plane, you know. So it was like, what am I doing here? You know? But
Superhero.
there were just
Through Christ.
no
Superwoman, I want to say.
through Christ,
Yeah.
definitely. But
In Christ.
so many things. We brought a number of children to the United States for life-saving surgery that they couldn't get here, and now it's so wonderful when we're here and I see them, and now they're grown up, and some of them are grown up and married and have children of their own,
Unbelievable.
but they were at death's door, and so just to see, there's just been so many things, so many blessings, just I can't even describe it. And
Because you see the whole story of Medjugorje, you have been the whole way through, nearly. You have been here and you have seen what's
almost, yeah.
And it's the spirit change, or it's still the same like in the 80s?
It's different in some respects. You know, when we came the first time, there were no street lights. The main road was a narrow dirt road. And there was, from the church to the old post office, there was nothing except fields and one little coffee shop. That was it. And
Wow.
and so it was a simpler way of life. And I think that's one of the things that the older people, my generation and older, they miss the simpler way of life. But the fact is that when I first came, they didn't have any of these pensions, and we were in somebody's home, and unbeknownst to us, my husband and I were in the parents' bedroom, and they were sleeping on the floor somewhere else in the house. And so all of this building and things that people criticize Medjugorje for was all necessary. I mean, they had to create places for people to stay, restaurants, you know, for eating, and everybody wants to bring back rosaries and things from Medjugorje, so all the shops started, you know. And so we've seen all that develop over the years, and it's different in that respect, but the underlying spirit is exactly the same. Exactly the same. And I have learned many things, and one of them is you cannot leave Medjugorje untouched by the love of Our Lady, even if you don't know it at the time, you know. And I've seen that happen too, where some people, they realize that while they're here, and other people, the seed is planted, and then after they get home, they realize, something makes sense that didn't make sense before. And it's just an amazing experience. We are on a mission this time. This is the longest I've been away from Medjugorje since 1987 because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So it's been 2.5 years since I've been here.
And that's the first time, huh?
This is the first time since then. And
yeah.
Yes, and one of the reasons that I'm here now is that my daughter passed away.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, 14 months ago. And it was very unexpected. And she had, unbeknownst to her, she had a ruptured colon, and she got sepsis, and she died very quickly. And she had just turned 50, and she had come here for the first time with me when she was 17. And the funny thing was, we were also going to Rome, and I heard her on the phone talking to her friend before we left, and she said, "I have to go to this religious place with my mom. But then after that, we're going to Rome, and I'm going to see the Gucci store." I thought, oh no.
My generation.
Right. But when it was time to leave Medjugorje, she didn't want to go. I said, I thought you wanted to go to Rome and see the Gucci store. She said, I don't care. I want to stay here. Can't you pick me up on the way home? She was 17. Well, then years later, she started, when I was into the humanitarian work, because my husband had a full-time job, so he could only come over with me once or twice a year. She came to work for us, and she started coming on the trips because it was too much for me to handle alone. And then she actually brought some groups on her own. So Medjugorje became really her second home, like ours. And then she got married, and when she was pregnant with her first baby, who was the one in the blue shirt there.
Oh, yep. I talked to her.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. She was diagnosed with cancer. And the doctors told her that she would not survive if she didn't have an immediate abortion and then have surgery and chemotherapy. And she adamantly refused. And they said, you won't live if you don't do this. And she said, if I die, so be it. But my baby's going to have a chance. And the doctors kept talking abortion. And she said, you don't have a clue. She said, if you knew how many people are praying for me, there's people praying for me all over the world because of Medjugorje. And she said, if I hear the abortion word one more time, I'm leaving. I'll get another doctor. So everybody prayed, and everybody over here was praying. And that young lady right there in the blue shirt was born perfectly healthy. And then Christy had 3 operations, and she was on chemotherapy for 2 years. And when she finished the chemotherapy, the doctor said, you're in remission, but you've had so much chemotherapy, you'll never be able to have another child. And she said, watch me. And then she had Michael.
The boy.
Yeah, and then she had Hannah.
On the back.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Hello, Hannah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And when Alexis was 6 years old, we put a Medjugorje conference on. For 20 years, we did them in Florida. When she was 6 years old, she gave her first Respect for Life talk at 6. And she didn't really understand abortion, but she told everybody, the doctors wanted this pretty lady to do something awful so the baby wouldn't be in her tummy anymore. But she said no, and she tells the whole story. And then the baby was born strong and healthy, and the mother survived and all that. And she said, and I know the story was true because the baby was me. And So that, and again, the connection to Medjugorje, it all came through, and so now she passed away of something completely unrelated, at the age of 50. So one of our things we're doing here is we're all healing. She had all the sacraments of the church, and I'm very confident that she's in heaven with Our Lady and Jesus. But it's still hard, very hard.
I know my sister died.
Yeah.
I know for my mother it was.
It's very hard.
It's like a stone on the heart. My mother.
Oh.
It's not leaving.
No.
In the end, it didn't.
No. But it's, we knew we had to come here together. And the children had been here before, and several times. But this time we knew, and their dad, he wanted to come too. He's been here also. But he was off so much after she died, he couldn't take the time off now. So that's why we're here together this time. But a group joining us in a few days. There'll be 25 more people, including our youngest son and his wife and their 5 children.
Unbelievable.
So,
and do you have you have brought so many people? Do you have like a special story with a person? What happened here?
Do I have what?
Like you brought so many people here. There must have been so many stories about what happened to them here.
Oh my gosh,
you
yes.
Have like one special story you want to tell people?
There's so many.
If you feel like it.
Sure. A couple that come to mind right away are, there was a man here one time. This was way back before the war, and he was not in my group, but I'd see him all the time at Mass, and he was a tall Texan with the Texas 10-gallon hat, and he was very outspoken and very negative. And I just couldn't get over it because we'd keep bumping into them at Mass or after Mass, and he didn't have anything good to say about Medjugorje or anything. So now we're on the way home, and we're in Zagreb, and our plane was delayed. And so everybody in the airport was coming back from Medjugorje. And so we're all sitting on the floor praying the rosary, singing songs, anything we could do to pass the time. And he's just grumbling and grumbling. Well, all of a sudden the apparition time came, and he looked out the window in Zagreb airport, and he saw the miracle of the sun. And he dropped down to his knees and put his arms up and was praising God and was crying and was apologizing to Our Lady and everything. It was just the most amazing, and he was so meek and mild after that. It was just amazing.
This is Medjugorje,
Yeah. Another time, in the early days, the apparitions used to take place in a room in the rectory. And we were outside, and we were listening to what was going on in the room, and they would let just a few people in, and this man went in with his little boy. This little boy was maybe 4 years old, and he had him up on his shoulders. And after they got in there, the little boy started crying, and he was pitching a fit. He didn't want to be in there. He wanted out and all that. And his father kept trying to calm him down. And then all of a sudden, just like a light switch, he stopped crying. And total silence. And when they came out, the father said to him, well, I'm so glad that you quieted down. And he said, well, that pretty lady was singing to me. And he described Our Lady to a T. 4 years old.
Wow.
That was just
beautiful. This is Medjugorje.
Oh, it is Medjugorje. I mean, things happen. I think the biggest thing, when you ask about people, over the years, the effect that we've seen that Medjugorje has had on people is just, it's beyond description. because it's different for everybody, you know. And I always tell people, try not to have any expectations. Just open your heart and be open to whatever Our Lady has for you, because she definitely has something for you. Just be open. And the stories that people will tell me even months later, years later. And what's really bad, though, is when you travel with so many people, you can't possibly remember them all. And I will get a phone call every so often, and it just happened last week. Someone called and she said, "You remember me? I went with you in 1991. And I was, "Oh yes, how are you?"
Sure.
Yeah, right. And they tell me, you know, how their life was changed, and even hardships, you know, they were able to handle. And I can even say that about my daughter. My heart is absolutely broken. And I know that a part of me will never be the same. But I also know, were it not for Medjugorje, I would not be sitting here having this conversation with you. Because I couldn't even, when she first died, I couldn't even mention her name without falling apart. But I know that I have such confidence in where she is because of Our Lady and because of Medjugorje and because the faith that I've received here, that's what makes it possible to keep going. And I would just encourage anybody who even thinks that they might like to come, because Our Lady calls people here. And if you even have the slightest inclination, she's probably calling you. And just come and be open, and you'd just be amazed. I mean, I don't like to fly. I have a prayer that I say. I made it up when I first started coming here. And when I'm okay unless it gets turbulent. And if there's turbulence, I always say, "God, I know I'm in your hands. Just don't drop me." And so that's,
It
you know,
works,
right.
obviously. It works.
But, you know, to be able to make that many trips with this nervousness about flying and you know, doing different things. I mean, we crossed over a bridge, and after we got to the other side, the bridge blew up. This was during the war. And, you know, but it was like nothing deterred us because it was Our Lady. She was behind it and pushing us and helping us. If it had been on our own, never would have happened. Never would have happened. So,
Wow. Thank you.
You're very
For this
welcome.
beautiful interview.
Well, I'm very honored that you asked. Thank you.